Yeah.
musicality in your future child. That I don't know that exists, and if it does, I don't know how many busy parents are looking for that. So
I was going to
happy
say
to be
that,
here.
and like almost everything else too.
Yeah,
Music,
exactly,
everything,
exactly.
right?
Totally.
Let's cultivate agency in every regard, right? So, uh, yes, not enough time spent for parents for sure. So we had spoken prior to you coming on about talking about misconceptions that parents have about special education students' ability to participate in music. So if we can focus on the special ed population, that'd be great. But I know the broader population is also can benefit from this as well. But is that okay with you that we focus in that area?
Definitely. And, in terms of the broader population, that's also going to include a lot of undiagnosed children. So I will definitely speak for the special ed population. And I'm going to do my best to try to be clear when I'm speaking about physical disabilities or developmental disabilities or other types of challenges that would put a student into a special ed program. I don't think that it defines those children at all. I definitely think that we have systems that categorize, and then those names tend to follow those kids for the rest of their lives sometimes, and can be very deficit based. So as a child of a 504 program, growing up with accommodations, it's a position that I speak about from personal experience, and then also as a teacher, having worked with so many different students.
Yes, cool. Yeah, I mean, to have both is a way for parents to really be influenced a little bit more,
Yeah.
because somebody who's lived something definitely has a better impact, a greater impact, I think. So should we start off with some of the misconceptions? Would that be a place to offshoot from here? So as far as involving kids in music lessons or music class, what are some misconceptions that parents have that might keep them from doing it, for putting their special needs child into a music class?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest lies from the music industry and from music education is this idea of talent, that some people are born with it, some people are not. And especially any limitations they may feel their student has that have been communicated to them by others, especially about whether music is realistic or possible, or whether the child is going to be able to manage themselves appropriately in class. There's this idea that music is very structured, and especially for anyone who thinks that it's entirely classical based, whether it's band, orchestra, choir, there can be a lot of structure in those classes, but there's also a lot of music programs where it is more exploratory, where you have general music and kids are moving a lot more. They're thinking and feeling and communicating. So there are those two ideas. One is that people are born with talent, people are not. Of course, we hear about autistic students who visit a piano and all of a sudden they're playing phenomenal classical pieces they've never been taught. But realistically, any child is capable of music. You have to give them the opportunity. So to believe what others might tell you about what your own child is capable of could actually hold your child back more than if you just say, well, I don't know what's going to happen, so let's find out.
Right.
And especially if you think, well, some people are more musical and others aren't. My family isn't musical. We don't have a musical gene in our body, therefore my child is probably not musical either. That talent lie is also very strong. There's some truth to it in terms of whether people have unusually long fingers, or they were born with headphones on their mother's belly while they were in the womb, and they have a predisposition to rhythm. For the most part, though, the concept of talent is just, it's hard work.
Right.
It's just
misunderstood, right?
Exposure.
Right.
Year on
Even the
year.
best have to practice.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you can be given this naturally beautiful voice, and you still have to be able to shape it and control it and understand it. Yeah, to use it.
Exactly.
So
So
it's an instrument, obviously.
yeah, and let
Right.
them try it out. If
Hmm.
one class doesn't work, that doesn't mean music isn't for them. It just means that class wasn't for them, or maybe that teacher wasn't for them, or that
Right.
instrument wasn't for them. But there are social programs. So if you don't find that your school's music program is the right fit for your child, you can try private lessons. One-on-one is always great if you find the right teacher.
Right.
And then there's also social programs. And sometimes there's programs in your local community that are specially geared towards students in certain populations with different needs. So Google is your best friend in that case. What do you have near you?
Right. Yeah, it's interesting because 2 points. I think just the stigma of the label special education
Yeah,
or special needs almost automatically eliminates music as an option. It probably in many
definitely.
cases, right? Secondly, I have a friend whose son has a genetic mutation, and he was going to the doctor. He went to this hospital for evaluation, and there was a piano. The mom said he couldn't stop. He wouldn't stop playing. He just loved it. He was looking at it, and you could hear, she videotaped it and sent it to me. You could see that he understood the patterns of where it was higher and where it was lower. And he was literally going in almost a sequential way because he was figuring it out. That over here is where it's more bassy, and over here it's a little bit more, it's higher. So he was getting that, and it was almost a natural thing for him. And this is a family that's not musically inclined, like you said earlier, right? So you might not even consider it. So here's a situation, just like you're saying. Here's a person that really should pursue and see where he can go with this, and to
Totally.
whatever degree, whatever level of ability whatever he can get out of it, it's bringing him joy.
Absolutely. And I think we touched on this in our last conversation, which is one of the best things you can do for your child is have things in the house.
Hmm.
So have a keyboard, have different forms of percussion, and you can get online like $30 children's percussion sets that are the cutest little dinky tambourines and
Right.
maracas. And
Hmm.
it doesn't have to be a major investment.
Right.
You can make percussion out of recycled goods,
Hmm.
which is another really fun activity that you can do with your child, which is like, what kind of sounds and feelings do different materials create? What can you build with what you have at home? The harmonica comb is a great example of that. Getting, I think it's like wax paper and a harmonica and a rubber band, or and a comb and a rubber band, and you can
Oh,
make
right.
your own like kazoo harmonica thing. I
Hmm.
did a bunch of these with my students where they learned a lot about physics through instruments, but just having them at home. I mean, this is a great example. Your friend's child of, what would your friend have learned if that piano had been in the house years before?
Hmm.
And so,
He's only 3, so it's not like,
oh, okay,
yeah, he's
so
very young.
like
So yeah, at
it's
this
the right
point,
time.
yeah. Right. She
But
may now buy one.
now she may,
Right.
yeah, which is highly encouraged because it sounds like that child's pattern recognition is phenomenal.
Hmm.
But also just play, having musical instruments in the house for just, you know, walking to dinner,
Oh,
bopping on the piano a little
yeah.
bit, just playing.
So we talked about misconceptions that parents have. What are some of the solutions to the misconceptions as far as how can parents be informed? Is there any insight that you can give that could be helpful for parents to open the door a little bit?
Yeah, I would say don't believe everything you're told about your child. I'm not saying to disregard medical professionals by any means, but no one is going to know better for your child than you do, and especially than your child knows for them. And the exploration piece is so important, especially in developmental years, like up to 8 or 11 years old, where when you say no, when you hold your child back from opportunities because either you're worried about how they might interact with others, or you're worried they won't be accepted, or you're worried that physiologically or psychologically they're not prepared for music. The reality is, unless you try, you're never going to know. And you might as well let them try it. And it's not their fault if their peers aren't on board with them, or if they have a teacher who doesn't really know how to manage them or how to integrate them into the classroom, how to teach to them. There are other teachers, there are other peers. It's worth trying to find a community, a musical community that can really embrace your child and not let them be held back by what other people think they are or are not capable of.
Right. It's almost like getting a second opinion from a doctor. Find another teacher.
Yes,
Yeah,
find another teacher.
don't let it just stop you right there. The door closes with one person's opinion.
Exactly. I've heard way too many stories of people who are like, "Oh, I had a terrible music teacher, therefore I quit forever."
Right.
And it's one of the most tragic stories I've heard, because it's like, if only that one teacher didn't ruin it for you, and now you're forcing your child into guitar at 4 because you wish that you had that instead.
Right, exactly. Another person pays for it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think about this with other things like therapists. You know, you should be willing to fire your therapist if they're not working to your needs, and you can't fire your public school classroom teacher
Right,
or your
right.
music teacher. And I'm not recommending that, but I am saying that if it's not a good fit, there are others. So one of the challenges that we're going to face in a school as music teachers is this barrier between the core curriculum teachers and the special teachers. And we're usually called special teachers in a lot of schools. You might find different names for them, but that's going to be your art teacher, your music teacher, even sometimes your PE teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of schools who have to fit a lot of programs into one day.
Right.
And they have to make decisions. And unfortunately, some of those decisions include pulling students out of class for a special needs program in order to increase one-on-one time, focused learning in phonics or math or tutoring of some kind. And it's often that that's going to happen during time with specialist teachers, during music class. And there's a lot of challenges for music teachers to advocate for students staying in their class, because the argument from administrators might be, well, we don't want to pull them out of their core subjects
Right.
to focus on their accommodations or IEP or program. So we chose music time because it's not as necessary.
Right.
And music teachers are screaming in the corner saying, it is necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why
Right.
are you doing this? You're ostracizing them socially from one of the most fun times they can have in a school day.
Mm-hmm.
And when else are they going to get the opportunity to engage in their peers in this way where it's not focused on academic
Right.
management and success?
Right. And a place
Sometimes,
where they can relax a little bit more and also
exactly,
discover, be exposed to something that now they're being prevented from being exposed to.
exactly.
Yeah.
So that is one barrier that you could honestly just talk with your administrators about, or your teachers, as a parent, to find out when is if my child is being pulled from class to have focused learning with a different tutor or specialist, someone that is working on the more core subject materials with their child. When is that happening during the day? And can we talk about that? Because there was a piece of feedback that Music Workshop got from our professional development course on music for well-being, because we obviously believe that music is a necessity for just everyday well-being. And this teacher was talking about how they were fighting with their administration because any student who was in the special needs program was being pulled during music time. And when they went to the administrators about it, the administrators said, well, there is no other time. music is the only time that makes sense. And the music teacher is saying, no, you're letting it make sense. I need you to make it not make sense. Like,
Mhm.
I'm telling you it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Find a different way to work with these children. And maybe that's where parents can come in, because they were saying that when they talked to the parent about it, the parent had no idea that their
Right.
child was being pulled out of music. And there is an element of trust that is needed with school administrators, with teachers, with the oversight of special needs programs. But it's definitely
Sure.
an area that I think parents could be a stronger advocate in
Hmm.
ensuring that their child is getting access to not just the same opportunities as students in their class, to make sure that socially they're getting all those, that whatever opportunities they can to stay integrated, connected, learn with their peers, but also those classes, music, art, they're necessary.
Yeah.
And is part of a well-rounded education. Area of growth musically is being able to self-soothe and manage your own emotional state. So for
Hmm.
children, especially post-COVID, there's a lot of dysregulation emotionally. Music is a phenomenal regulatory mechanism. Like, you can use music to regulate your nervous system, your emotional state. And for kids who have not learned the language to express their feelings enough, and this might especially be the case for students with special needs, where maybe developmentally they don't have that language capacity, or they don't necessarily have the self-awareness to identify what they're feeling and then express it. Music can be one of those tools that they use without being able to explain why. And angry music, sad music can be an indication, not that they're worshiping the devil, but that there's an emotional need that they have that is being satisfied musically. And I can definitely say this was the case for a lot of the boys that I went to high school with who were friends of mine, where there were issues at home. There was a lot of sadness, grief, and they became huge metalheads. A lot of really dark, intense music. And they were actually the sweetest teddy bear people you'll ever meet, because the music was soothing an emotional need that they had that they couldn't figure out how to express otherwise, or how to work through otherwise. And
Yeah.
so for a lot of parents, it can be scary to let your child just develop their musical taste. And especially when you listen to some of it as an adult and you're like, wow,
Yeah.
I'm not sure I would make those same choices. What is this?
Hmm.
There's a reason for it,
Right.
probably. And it would be
Yeah.
great if you could learn what that is.
I was
You
going to
may
say
not.
that opens the door to the possibility of communication. Say, this is
Right.
really interesting. I'd like to learn more about it, as opposed to saying, that's terrible. There's not a direct correlation, right, from
Right.
angry
Totally.
music to an angry person necessarily,
No.
or to violence necessarily. It's a
Right.
way, as you're saying, of processing your emotions and what you're going through, and what a safer way to do it too, right? I mean,
Totally.
yeah. So,
The one caveat, there is a caveat, and
hmm.
that is rumination. So for teachers in our professional development program, we talk about the importance of music listening in self-regulation, and that the same person can hear sad music and feel happy, that another person can hear that same sad music and feel sad, another person can feel angry. People can experience the same music and have vastly different emotional reactions to it based on personal experience, and also how
Right.
you're enculturated into certain musical styles. So where you grow up and the kind of music that you grow up listening to will affect how you respond to it emotionally. And you can definitely see this is the case with film music, because it's developed literally to make you feel as much as possible.
Sure.
And so if you grow up in South India, you might grow up in different musical systems that elicit different feelings and emotions than you would in Argentina or here in Seattle. It
Hmm.
just depends on what you grow up with. And sad music has confounded researchers for years because they're like, why does sad music feel so good?
Hmm.
And
That's really,
it is
yeah,
healthy to the
sure.
point that you're not ruminating. And one of the reasons why metal, punk, rock, many of these darker or scarier or sadder styles of music
Aggressive.
uh, is not as understood is because some people connect to it in a way that is very unique to them. However, it becomes a problem when you're ruminating, which is just sort of obsessively
Obsessing on it.
thinking about these
Right.
negative thoughts.
Right.
You have to be able to move forward emotionally into
Yeah.
a place of peace and joy and happiness. And so if you do notice that your child is listening to a lot of the same darker music, that might be an indication that they're unaware of what kind of emotional skills they need to move into the joy space.
Hmm. Okay.
Therapists are always advised. I
Yes.
think everyone should have a therapist.
I've always said that too.
But if parents don't really know how to work with their child, let's say that they recognize signs of depression or toxic stress in the musical choices the child is making, ask open-ended questions. Start
Hmm.
there. Why do you like this music? What are you feeling?
Right.
Why do you choose that one? What
Hmm.
is it about
What
this
is it about
one?
that? Right. What, right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because otherwise, you'll have a child who's shut down and doesn't communicate with you, and it'll
exactly.
be a mystery. And
They'd
then,
much rather you be interested.
yeah, absolutely. And you can fake it. You don't have to be. You don't have to like it. You know,
As long as
you
you
just
don't judge it.
yeah, exactly. Just show that you're interested in wanting to know what it does for your child, right?
Yep,
And being open to that. Um, I again, there's just, really we need a school for parents. There's just so many things that are
agreed.
missing. Thank you for touching upon that because it's really, really so important. It's such a huge point to be made. And, I wouldn't have thought about it myself. So really, really so grateful.